We live in the world and the time in which we are more connected than ever. How so, you probably wonder? Well, through social media, of course, and other channels of communication that people today interact with. Actually interact through. Because today, people interact with more people in a day than our ancestors have interacted with in their whole lifetime. This has led to us having more diverse, heterogeneous reality, which we embrace daily. Exposure to different cultures, traditions, customs, religions, realities in general has shaped our minds and beings in a very unique and extraordinary way. Although quite overwhelming at time, having to be in contact with so many sources of information and realities, this type of environment definitely has affected our society in a positive way regarding the openness to diversity, the other, if we want to say so, and consequently opened our society to become more accepting and inclusive. In this episode of YouthSquad, I have an opportunity to talk about multiculturalism and its perks and flaws with Lazar, a young activist from the Balkans who actually has a chance to live through everything that I described in the beginning of this episode. In his activism, Lazar focuses on regional cooperation, building bridges among societies, at times even, conflicted societies that have difficulty building bridges, and creating a more loving and, if I may say so, European region that we live in. Welcome, Lazar. Thank you for being a part of this episode. How are you?
Hello, thank you for having me, and thank you for these lovely words. I'm really excited to have this chance to talk about this regional cooperation. As you said, it's not always a peaceful one, especially here in the Balkans, but I really think that we live in a really special place, and Balkans have a lot to be proud of, and I am looking forward to talking about it today with you.
No,
how are you?
You see, nobody asked me that in previous episodes. I'm doing great, and I really am looking forward to this conversation because we kind of, sometimes, especially in the Balkans, but like in Europe in general, when we talk about societies and their cooperation, we sometimes focus on, we usually focus on differences and, challenges that we can, face during creating this, cooperative relationship. But, why don't we focus on the positive things that multiculturalism actually offers? Like, why don't we, focus on the beauty of that we are different? So that's what actually I wanted to talk to you about. And first of all, because, our audience doesn't know you, would you mind telling us how you ended up building bridges and creating these, platforms among communities that are not really interacting with each other much?
I promise the story won't be long, and it's all about building bridges.
This actually promising.
Yeah.
That's exactly what someone with a long story would say.
I will be really quick, but it's really about building bridges. I was
joking, take all the time you need.
And that was my genuine beginning about when we speak about regional cooperation, and you will see that nothing actually changed after that event, and it took place in 2014. So I was 13 years old, and I was in Switzerland on one exchange, which was about human rights, especially rights of the children. And I was with, of course, Serbian group, because I'm from Serbia, and we were together with Swiss group. But the majority of pupils, I was in primary school back then, were actually Swiss citizens with Balkan origin. And it was really interesting because we didn't expect that, because I didn't know about Swiss immigration back then. And the majority of that Balkan group was actually Albanian. They were both from Kosovo, from Albania. And let's say we had some obstacles back then on that exchange. But in the end, we really had a lot of understanding from our teachers. And we had one task, two boys from Serbia, me and my friend, and two boys, Albanian boys, but from Switzerland. We had a task to build an actual bridge from paper, and that bridge must hold 20 Swiss chocolates. So it was really interesting, a bit weird. We didn't expect them to connect these two pairs. And the problem was that we didn't speak English good enough to understand each other, but eventually we did build that bridge, and it held 20 Swiss chocolates. So I really want to see that picture as the beginning of my essential wish to build those bridges in real time in the Balkans, not in Switzerland. Especially in between nations, if I may say so, nations which are not always friendly, especially, let's say, Serbs and Albanians. And we know what's happening not only in the recent times, but in the last 20,
How
30,
many? Yeah.
even more.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the beginning. And now I do a lot of things in that way. I am a student of political sciences, science, as we would say in English. And that is like the core.
Wow, I mean, this story was actually quite artistic, like metaphorical way of describing how you ended up where you are right now. I really like the fact that you had to build an actual bridge, and that you're now building those more abstract bridges. They're not holding Swiss chocolate, but rather, this solidarity kind of thing. And, it just has a lot of poetic sense to it. I really like the story. Thank you for sharing it. But like, what does it mean to you? Like, now that you do this, like that happened, you mentioned in 2014. Since then, a lot has changed in your life. You as a person, you grew up. You developed, you started searching for yourself, who you are, where you want to be in life. But also like the reality around us, like we had a lot of things happening in the last couple of years, and since 2014, tons. So what does that mean to you today? Like, how do you picture it?
It's a good question. We can always hear, especially here, I here in the Balkans, I would say that older people say you cannot change anything. It is the way it is. You have just to deal with the reality, and you cannot change. You can go in some different realities which are not that far away. It's for example here in Europe, but you cannot change anything here in the Balkans. And they talk about that, especially to young people, because they want to save us from wasting our energy, wasting our youth, and so on and so on. And that story is really boring. And I think it's not true, because when we just see the history and how it developed, you can always see major empires, major things changing. And if you say that some not so major, if I can call them like that, things cannot change here, you're just a coward in a way. I don't want to judge. Okay, you can choose if you want to deal with it or not. But you should try, and you should not take those words blindly and accept them and deal with it. Like, you can change those things. And me, as a young person here in the Balkans, experienced some events, some relationships, some friendships, which changed not changed, but they told me that I'm on the right path, that changes are really possible here in the Balkans, but you need time. You cannot do something over the night and expect tomorrow that you wake up in a completely liberal, democratic society where peace is basis and where everybody loves or at least respects each other. So that is maybe something I would say in my response.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex question. Like, what it means to you, you would have to probably describe your whole life, and you would have to talk about every relationship you mentioned, every friendship you've bonded, every person you bonded with on friendship levels, just like every bit and piece of your personality, you would have to, mention it in order to understand, in order for us to get a clearer picture of what, this process means to you. I definitely agree that, there are two ways to handle the situation where we are like right now in the world. Like, you have a lot of conflicts going on, a lot of nations not cooperating, a lot of cultures actually not cooperating with each other. And, you can either sadly accept it and live with your frustration for the rest of your life, or you can change it. And obviously, you as an activist, you choose the other option. You chose the other option because that was the only for you. And I completely agree with you, but I understand if there are other perceptions as well.
Of course.
Of
course.
Obviously respect, but we don't have to necessarily agree on those things. And I think the fact that we talk about it today in this episode is also a really good sign that we are very willing to change what we see in our environment. Especially, for example, in the eastern part of Europe. I believe that the cultures that we are talking about are not that different. We have a lot of connections with each other, but we still focus on differences. And I think, it's important to talk about the similarities that we experience in order to, create bridges again, like going back to the bridges,
Yeah, you're completely right. And I have one, let's say, thesis why we emphasize the differences, because we don't have a chance to meet each other, actually. Most of us, until that one point when you actually go out from your comfort zone, from your national or country comfort zone, and you meet, for example, if I'm Serbian, I meet one Albanian, and I meet maybe one young person from Bosnia, and so on and so on. And when you meet them, you understand that your folk music, for example, is the same. Like literally, we have the same music with different lyrics in different languages. And
food.
Like if you have food and music, what do you need more? Because you can go out and you can enjoy in the same things. You can even play the same music, just sing in your own language, and you already have a party. And that is already quite different from the beginning, because
where we focused on differences.
Yeah, you thought that, okay, we have some problems, and those problems last for decades or centuries or I don't know what, and you think we cannot change anything. And then you find out that you can sing the same song, and maybe that song is your favorite. And I always emphasize that in our music, because if you think wider, you will figure out that you don't have so many languages and nations you can share your music, like literal music with. I cannot sing, I don't know, the same song with someone from China or from South Africa or from Brazil, but I can do that with all other Balkan nations, for example. And I'm not the one who would say, okay, it's enough that we have the same music, the same food and drinks. It's not enough, but it's a start, because when we start, for example, eating and drinking, we can start talking, and we must talk, even though we don't have the same perspective. It's essential to talk exactly in those situations. It's boring to talk with people who think like you. Yeah, I mean, definitely you gotta challenge yourself to go out of your comfort zone, find elements that can serve as a basis to start mingling, and just to expose yourself to different cultures. And I think what you mentioned, that exchange in Switzerland, like what happened to you there was that you got exposed to people from Albania, to people from Kosovo. And I was a kid.
And you were a kid, but it doesn't matter. Like, even if it was like, people go all their lives not meeting their neighbors, and that's really sad. And, not meeting them means that you can create all these conspiracy theories about how their life looks like, when in fact, it's not much different than yours. And in the end, you as a teenager at the time, you now as an, young adult, you have pretty similar realities, and still face maybe common struggles, which you can talk about. And these things, this is what exposure does. Like you get exposed, and what happens, you feel less scared because all the things that you had as a prejudice now can actually be formed on a concrete experience. And I think that's really important, and that's crucial for, using multiculturalism in our favor. So, like, what are other ways to get exposed to someone from other culture, from other religions, and so on and so on?
Well, you mentioned the internet in the beginning, and I think it's really what changed the perspective of young people, because when we talk about, let's say, 30 years ago, or a generation of our parents or grandparents, they didn't have the chance to text every day with somebody who is from other parts of the planet, to exchange what are they doing, some customs and so on and so on. And today it's something absolutely normal, and it's actually not every day, it's in every minute. So we need a bit of rest from the internet and mobile phones. And it's a good way to stay connected. I wouldn't push that as a first step. It can be, of course, because sometimes we cannot pass all those distances in reality. But it's a good way to stay connected with people you meet. And when you hear about some exchanges, and there is a lot of them here in the Balkans, I really think that we have more exchanges than we have people who are willing to go on those exchanges, which is a problem.
That's my experience as well.
Yeah, because I understand they are probably afraid, especially when we talk about neighboring countries where, let's say, those relations, interstate relations, are not the best. But I would give another example. I went to Pristina last year, and I must admit I was afraid. My family was afraid. My friends were afraid. They were even trying to not to allow me to go until the last day. But I was decisive, and I had to go for myself. I don't know how to explain it, but I just knew that I have to go there. And another I was afraid when I came there. I didn't want to speak in Serbian for the first day because I had some pre-thoughts about people living
what it
there.
looks like being a Serb in Kosovo.
Of course. And I came from Belgrade, and I know that there was some political issue even then, which is not anything new, but when you get those things in the media, everybody escalates.
It kind of it gets, the atmosphere becomes a little bit heavier. That's true.
Of course. Long story short, I was there for 5 days. I ended up with so many friends, both foreigners and Albanians from Pristina. I met so many older people who wanted to speak in Serbian with me. I didn't have any problem, and I just saw completely different picture than from what I could see in Serbia, in our media, even though I found myself as a media literate young person. And maybe the conclusion would be from this story that you have to feel to be afraid sometimes, because it shows you that you are going out from those boundaries, and you are maybe putting those stereotypes and even worse prejudice on a test. You test them and you can see the results. I'm not just hearing what other people think, what media presents, what politicians say. I have to comment on politicians. They are the worst here in the Balkans. They are just hatred spreaders, if I can call them like that. So we have to take things in our own hands, especially young people, because we are able to go and to speak with other young people which are different from us. I wouldn't expect that from many older people. When I say older, I think like
Don't
Okay, I won't.
don't go there.
I won't say that. But it's up to young people.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. In a recent episode of YouthSquad, I also mentioned that, the main difference that I find, for example, between me and my parents is that I, as a young person, am only now entering the world that they've been living in for some time. So sometimes they get used to things that they don't necessarily like. And for me, as a young person, these things represent a shock of a certain type. And they represent something that's, a new frustration, a new sensation that I have to do something about. And that's why I believe the youth is the change bringer. We actually have the inner drive for different things, like for change, because we are not used to things being bad. So like the trick is not to get used to it. And what you mentioned with challenging yourself is actually kind of a similar thing, because like you're not used to feeling. You're not used to being in your comfort zone. You don't want to get used to your comfort zone. You want to move yourself out of it and, take things into your hands and do something about it. So you get exposed, you are afraid, but then for sure, whether it was worth being afraid or not. In the end, it doesn't matter. Was it worth it or not? Because in the end, you got a definite answer, and that is that we are all humans in the end, and that, you can sometimes like someone or dislike someone, but that's only based on, for example, your interests, vibes, energies, rather than, what passport they have.
Of course. And we always hear that word dialogue. I love it. As I mentioned, I am a political scientist, future political scientist, and I love dialoguing. But if we put it more like into a conversation, and I want to use that word, especially when we are speaking in our mother languages, people will see that process, and it's a process, everyday process, which is normal. It is normal to sit with somebody like you and me are doing right now, and to talk about different things and to stay maybe not calm all the time. It's good to be passionate about something, especially about your ideas, about your wishes, about your, I don't know, even ideology, put it like that. But you have to put like some I hate this phrase, but it's a red line. It's not a red line. It's just a line where that conversation has to stay a conversation.
It has to be civil.
Yeah, it has to be decent and respectful. Yeah, that would be maybe the most appropriate word for a conversation. It has to be respectful, and it has to accept your your identity. And if we have some different views on something in politics, that's the least problem we can have, because we already accepted our identities. And that's the basis. We cannot talk to each other if we don't respect and don't accept
ourselves.
Of course.
No, I just, like, my mind is blown right now, because when you started talking about dialogue, I just thought how, boring of a word it is. But, like, not because of the word dialogue, that I have nothing personal against the word. But, it's been so misused, like so often misused in everyday speech, that you don't even notice it, but like your ears become numb to these things. Like, what does dialogue even mean in the end? Because of all the things we've heard about it, I'm not even sure anymore. Like, I can find a definition in a vocabulary, but is it what's happening, in our reality is really a dialogue? I don't think so. But like changing it with the word conversation is actually like made me really feel things in my chest when you mentioned it, because I understand now, like, we have to conversate, like we have to talk, and you in the beginning
and listen to each other. Yeah,
that's the respectful part.
Of course.
Like it has to be it has to be like dialogue. It stands for two.
Yeah,
like it has to be. It takes two to tango. It takes two to have a conversation, and a respectful conversation.
I love that phrase. We should put it somewhere.
We should put it on a t-shirt. We should definitely put it on a t-shirt. But like what you mentioned in the beginning, music and those informal gatherings where you can actually exchange your ideas is what's crucial for this. What I have experience with during these youth exchanges and like mobility youth kind of trips and stuff is that the essence of the trip and the whole activity comes down to our hangouts in the evenings, because those informal gatherings actually create a comfortable platform for us to exchange and have a conversation. Of course, during the sessions, the formal parts where you have a mediator, facilitator, someone who's leading the conversation, it also can be really productive. It can serve as a basis for what happens afterwards. But I think what happens afterwards is the crucial part, because that's when you actually get to know someone. That's when you start to make inappropriate jokes. Understand that there are inappropriate jokes in both languages. Hear them speak in their mother tongue, and then you understand some word and you say, I know that one. Or, we have something like that here, or, we don't have anything like that here. Like, can you tell me more about it? And this is when exposure happens. And this is when you start realizing that, the differences, the culture that we have is actually what's making us rich. And that's beautiful. I just went on a speaking spree, but yeah.
This was so inspiring, and this was so true. I would, I have the same experience from those exchanges, and we usually say here that the business is done in kafana, so in a cafe, in a bar, in somewhere where is loud music, tasty food, and good booze. But that is actually true, even with young people. Okay, maybe it's not kafana, though I like kafana. But those big changes happen after all activities with learning and teaching stuff, not because that is not good enough or it's not enough. It is just more formal. And we have to admit that formality sometimes kills the vibe, especially when we speak about young people. So meeting after those formal things, and as you mentioned, hearing different people speaking in their mother language and listening them carefully. If you will catch something that is the same in your language, even though you maybe didn't expect that you have anything similar in your languages, is really what makes differences. Because then you see that, okay, we are not that different. And even, as you mentioned too, when you hear something completely different, you want to know the meaning, and then you start meeting them more profoundly and more sincerely, which is not just, okay, when we start some formal things, let's meet and say something about yourself in 3 or 4 sentences. Okay, it's necessary at that time, but it's not enough, especially when you're meeting complete foreigners and strangers at the same time.
Foreigners and strangers, that's so nice.
Yeah, I just feel so inspired now to go on exchange, like immediately after this.
Yeah, me too. I mean, like, best experiences, and honestly, the people that I like the most in this, like, when you know that feeling when you feel human, when you actually understand that you exist and that you are alive. Those feelings I've had only during exchanges and during while meeting people that I would never think of being in the same room with. Meeting people from Vietnam, meeting people from India, meeting people from Mexico. Like, thinking about how different our reality is makes me feel so ecstatic about life, because in the end, we still ended up in the same room. And I cannot comprehend the complexity of that. And, it's not only about catching flights and going there. It's a whole mental preparation to get there. And we ended up in the same room talking about something that's completely random, exchanging memes and Taylor Swift songs, and it ends up being beautiful and magical. Like, if there was magic in the world, I would describe that feeling of being completely aware of your existence and existence of other people and their cultures within the same realm. It's just amazing.
And when you speak to little Maria from maybe your childhood, can you imagine that you will go to Vietnam and meet those people and all those mentioned things? Because really, we should use everything we have today. It was never easier to go from one point to of this planet, of the only planet we have, to completely another part, to meet all these people and to find something that can connect you. For example, Taylor Swift music.
I would specific way to connect with people.
Yeah, but I really feel that we should use this more, especially when you have that feeling that you meet other realities. If you only stay in your reality, it will become a simulation because you will stay in your bubble. And I really hate those bubbles.
Me too.
Okay, you feel safe there. And we are human beings. One of the basic needs is to feel safety. But that kind of safety is a trap. It's not real safety because you...
It's imaginary quite.
Yeah. You imagine a world, the world the way you want to shape it. And it's not the real thing. And if you stay in that bubble, you will just become some kind of self-victim. And that's why you should find a proper measure for yourself.
Whatever fits your boundaries and stuff.
Yes. Today I will stay in my bubble. Maybe even tomorrow. Maybe for the whole week, month, maybe even a year. But after that, you have to be aware that you should go out and you should meet other people, maybe people who are not your cup of tea. They probably are not.
But you learn through those experiences too. I mean, we're talking about cultures, but if we're talking about, personalities wise, we can actually learn a lot about yourself. I learned a lot about myself, but by meeting people that I don't necessarily like hanging out with. Because, you understand what's making you uncomfortable. And sometimes even you start changing those things and in the end realize that, it wasn't them, it was you. Or, just there's a whole personal voyage behind every connection you make with people. Interaction, not even connection, interaction. Every time you rub off someone in the bus, you change someone's reality. And that's, wow. I went really philosophical about this topic, but it is philosophical.
It is. It's about dialoguing. And it's incredible. I completely agree with you. Even though if you don't like somebody you met, a new person, you should use that opportunity to learn something new about yourself. And you can always do that, even from the bus, a regular bus ride or something like that. So if you want to count, okay, this was not good, I should have stayed in my bubble, maybe, but try to reach if you learn something new about yourself. And if you did, you will be a better version of yourself tomorrow. So that experience was good too, even though maybe the newly encountered person was not good to you or for you. So basically, it's all about perspectives.
Absolutely.
Changing them, adapting them to what you need, at what time you need what.
Definitely, yeah. Timing is also very important. No, I mean, I completely agree with you. And, what you mentioned about bubbles, let's leave it let's put it like this. Your bubble is there and it exists no matter whether you are in it or out of it. If you live it and you don't like it, or you need some, comfortable time with yourself and, stuff, you can always go back, take your time, don't overdo it. You have to enjoy the process in order for it to be productive. So just take your time, do it, in small steps, but do it still. Because, exposing yourself to other cultures, yes, it changes you as a person, but it changes the society where you're coming from. It leads to democracy. It leads to a more equal and equitable society that we live in. It helps us understand the world better, and it affects how we think. And I think that's, maybe one way to kind of summarize what we've talked about.
Yeah, it's good to mention it, for at least for the conclusion, community. You're not on your own, and when you go to those exchanges and bring something new to your life, you bring that something new to your whole community, and that is of great impact, especially when you come from, let's say, more closed communities, smaller cities in the Balkans, which are not famous for having a lot of foreigners or differences in that particular town or city or even village. So you should always see that, okay, I'm getting something new, but it's not only for me, because I will share it with my community. And when I say community, I think of my family, my friends, even my school, my faculty, and so on and so on. It's like a wave. It will end, but really, really far away from me. So it's a good thing to add that it's not only about your growing, it's about changing the whole community you belong to. And we should maybe appreciate it more, because communities are a good thing, especially when we want to be strong individuals. You cannot do it without a strong community.
I don't even want to say anything else, because this is just, made it so beautiful. Like, I don't want to ruin it. I think we definitely have to end here, because this was something I want our audience to go like home to do, or also but in their mind homes, and to have actually this written subconsciously in their minds, and to live by those words that you just mentioned, because I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Lazar, for this philosophical, inspiring, motivational conversation, respectful conversation.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here, and I hope we have a chance to discuss this more in depth in future.
I'm sure that will happen. Have a nice day. Of course.
Thank you for listening to this episode of YouthSquad. Thank you for listening to YouthSquad. My name is Maria. The YouthSquad podcast series is recorded under a small-scale project in the field of youth called Voicehood of Youth, which will cover 4 topics: human rights, gender equality, European multiculturalism, inclusion and diversity, and active participation. The project is implemented within the Erasmus Plus program and is financed by the Swedish National Agency. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure you stay tuned for another episode.